Goedemorgen, Matthijs. Good morning.
Hi, more Bart. Good morning. Yeah, we're going to do this one in English today, aren't we?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Yeah.
We have some exciting guests today to do a real tech show with technical content. So I'm excited.
As am I. Yes. So who do we have today, Bart?
We have two people from Peer Software today, and I'm not going to introduce them completely, but I am very excited about their solution. What they can do to enhance our solutions, but also on their own. So we talked to this a couple of weeks ago together, Matthijs. So we had the idea to invite them to Nutanix Draaidoor to make a real cool episode with their story.
Yep, and they were happy to accept. Yeah,
indeed. So good morning, Dennis and Spencer.
Good morning, guys.
Hi, good morning.
All good so far. How are you doing?
Perfect.
Pretty good.
Okay, nice.
Dennis, I can see you're in your home office. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think like everybody, we are used to work from home at the moment.
And Spencer probably has a green wall.
Yeah, I'm cheating because my home office is far messier than Dennis's.
I just don't have a green screen, and you can see, just in my working room here at home. But I think this will work.
It's nice having all those insights into people's home. Right, yeah. And then you see kids coming by. You see piles of books everywhere and clothes. It's fun to see.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. Hey guys, thank you very much for joining us today. As Bart already introduced you, you guys are from Peer Software. The background of Spencer already gives it away. And Peer Software does a lot of nice things, also together with the Nutanix file solution. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Dennis prepared a presentation, but also a demo. Of course, we like demos. So thank you very much for your time and joining us here. And I'm really curious about what Peer Software does, where you guys come from. So maybe you can tell a little bit about yourself, how long you've been working for Peer, and a small introduction.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. As you already said, my name is Dennis von Oldenburg. Maybe you can hear it from my accent. I'm from Germany, close to the Netherlands border in the north of Germany. And yeah, I'm working for Peer Software 3.5 years now. I'm working in IT for, I think, 12 years. In the past, I mainly worked for resellers and worked for data center solutions, storage stuff, SAN, network attached storage, virtualization, stuff like that. But for Peer Software, I'm now for 3.5 years, and I'm in the pre-sales team for the whole European region and also a little bit for the APAC region. So Spencer.
Lovely, thank you. Well, I'm a fairly recent hire at Peer Software. I've been here since April, learning the packages as much as I can with Dennis's help and some of the other colleagues to bring myself up to speed. I'm also a pre-sales engineer, and I'm getting customer facing now, which is good. So that's the learning has been paying off. But I have a long background and history in IT. I've spoken at several industry events, things like Gartner, VMware, various VMware user groups, other technology user groups, mainly around virtualization and enterprise level IT and how to improve things and make things run more smoothly. So I'm very pleased to be at Peer and, of course, joining you guys today.
Yeah, so you're, as we call it, a Corona hire.
Well, actually, just before, and I have to say, with what's going on with a lot of poor souls at the moment, I consider myself to be extremely fortunate to A, have landed the job just before it all seemed to hit, and B, to be able to keep the job, because there's so many people at the moment that are in a very unfortunate position.
Hey, pure out of interest, Spencer, how do you handle the learning? Because there's no co-workers you can go to or events and stuff like that. So you're basically stuck in your home office. You do everything remote, or how do you do that?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I have a fairly well kitted out home office, I have a very hefty workstation that I can run a virtual lab in. I've got a NAS box as well that I can play around with. And I have to say, with today's collaboration tools, it really hasn't been a sort of barrier to learning. I can speak with Dennis and my senior Pete whenever I need to, really. He's the technical director. And they were kind enough to give me access to the software early on so that I could play with it in my lab and try out different scenarios, see if I can break it, of course, and really just have a very steep learning curve and learn as much as I can in a short space of time.
Breaking it is always the best test, right? If you know where it breaks, you know what the software can do. Very good.
Well, yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's really useful to figure out what you can use the software for, and all the different scenarios and possible customer use cases, because there are quite a few. And I think Dennis is going to go through some of that today, especially with a Nutanix focus.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Spencer. All right, Dennis.
I'm looking forward to see you in person. We still haven't met each other.
Yeah. That's, all right, Dennis. So you prepared something. I'm very curious as to Peer Software as a company, but especially as a product. So if you could tell us a little bit about what does it do, when to position it, where does it work, etc., and then maybe show a little bit of the software, that would be awesome. Wow.
Sure. Why not? So you can already see my screen, I guess.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Then whenever you have questions, please just put it into the chat. Spencer will monitor the chat and try to remind me if I oversee something. Maybe he's also able to already answer a couple of questions. We will see. But again, just feel free to ask whenever you want to. So Peer Software is a complete software-based company. We don't sell any hardware boxes, appliances, or things like that. Everything is software-based. And just a little bit of the company history. As Nutanix, we are an US company, but our headquarter in Europe is based in Munich. We also have an office in London. So usually Spencer is working from London. I should be working from Munich, but because Munich is like, I think, 800 kilometers away, I usually work from home. And we also have a small office in Germany in Ulm, but there's mainly marketing, inside sales, stuff like that. That's why it's not listed here. However, I think the most interesting part is that our support is also based in Munich. So if you call us between European business hours, normal European business hours, you get support from Munich, and otherwise you will be redirected to the States. So a little bit of history, what we did in the past with Nutanix. So here again, we become Nutanix, Elevate partner, stuff like that. But I think interesting for you guys is for Nutanix files, the API was developed together with Peer Software. So the API integration we use to grab events, replicate data and stuff like that was done by our development manager and his team and your development team in the States, which I think is a nice partnership. And we already have a couple of customers using our software together with Nutanix files or Windows VMs running on the hypervisor to replicate data or to build up an HA solution. And now let's have a look what we can do and how our software integrates with your solution. So first of all, from the software portfolio, it's really easy. We just have one software. It's called Peer Global File Service, or Peer GFS. I think that's easier. And with this software solution, we can address different use cases. But everything is under a single graphical user interface. You can configure different job types and stuff like that. So how can this software help Nutanix, or how can we combine Nutanix and Peer Software? And I've brought up, I think, 4 different use cases here. And the first one is collaboration. So active file sharing and collaboration. We are able to replicate data from one Nutanix cluster hosting a Nutanix files cluster to another one. For example, we are in a POC at the moment with Vodafone. I think it's together with Vincent from Nutanix Netherlands. And we replicate profile data between two Nutanix systems. And the way how we do this is we don't replicate the data scheduled. We use something called real-time replication. So we are event triggered. Whenever a file is created, modified, deleted, we get the event and replicate it immediately to the other side.
Okay.
And
Dennis,
yeah,
you do the replication part of that. So I'm sorry
yes,
in the details. So we have a replication as well in Nutanix, but that's not being used. Peer software handles replication, and you basically have two standalone Nutanix files clusters.
correct, or more, can be more, right? Yeah, and both will be active, so you can work on both Nutanix file systems. And with collaboration, we're not only replicating the data, we also look into the file open table of the operating system. And as soon as someone opens a file, we will make sure that no one else can open the same file in a read-write mode on the other locations. So we have replication with file locking, and that is what we call collaboration. Okay. But sometimes you don't need file locking. For example, if we're talking about VDI, Citrix profiles, Windows profiles, you have your own profile, I have my profile. We don't share any data, so there's no need for file locking. And right now, with the customer I've just mentioned, Vodafone, where we have a POC ongoing, they are testing Nutanix files together with peer software to replicate Citrix profiles and build up an HA solution. And this is what we can do here with our second use case. So real-time replication, again, active, but without file locking. And third, I already mentioned it earlier, you don't have to install Nutanix files on both or on every single system. You can also use a Windows file server running on your hypervisor. And you can then replicate data between a Windows system and your Nutanix file system. Or imagine you have a customer running, have 50 different locations running with NetApp, EMC, Windows file server, whatever, and he's not willing to exchange 50 storage boxes with Nutanix. Then you can use our software to maybe bring in like 2 or 3 Nutanix systems, replicate the data between Nutanix and the existing NetApp EMC systems, and then replace it one after another. Yeah, so we can extend the reach of Nutanix.
Exactly. It's also a migration strategy from that point.
Exactly. There we go. You can also use ours to migrate data from existing NAS storage, Windows storage into Nutanix files.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some nice use cases. I think that especially the first and the second are really unique, right? Especially with the global file locking.
Correct. Yeah, and these are the one we are most famous for.
Nice. No, tell me more.
So then let's jump into the collaboration use case. Again, this is real-time replication with file locking. I have a small little environment here with Nutanix file or Nutanix clusters with Nutanix files hosted in Munich, Washington, and Los Angeles. And the customer hosting the systems is also using a global namespace, a Microsoft namespace. So this is important to understand. We don't act as a gateway. We don't bring our own share or namespace. Everything can stay exactly the same like it's already been used in the customer environment. If they have a PowerShell script, the backup software, login scripts that pointing to DNS names, to IP addresses, to a namespace, it doesn't matter. We don't change the way how people or software access the data. However, in this use case, the customer is using a global namespace from Microsoft. So as soon as someone tries to open a document, he will ask the namespace, where is the document? And to replicate the data between these 3 different systems, we bring in our agents. Our agents will be installed directly next to the Nutanix system on a Windows VM. Usually, this Windows VM is hosted by your own hypervisor, and then we connect through the API into the Nutanix file system. So for every Nutanix system, we need a small VM where we can install our agent. And the second part of our software is our management center, or the PMC, where you can monitor the jobs, send out email alerts, SNMP traps, stuff like that. So what happens now if someone tries to open a Word document, an Excel sheet, whatever, from the Nutanix system in Munich? You first ask the namespace, what is my next closest Nutanix file system? And the namespace redirects them to Munich. Then he opens the file, and as soon as the file is opened, our agent get a file open event from the Nutanix system and replicate it to the other systems, which means the file is now locked on all the other systems. So if someone else in Los Angeles, for example, tried to open the same Word document, you get a message, the file is already being in use by Mr. Miller, and you can only open it in a read-only mode. Now, the changes will be replicated on a byte level base between all these different systems. And as soon as the file is closed, everybody is up to date and is able to open the same file again in a read-write mode. Yeah. And whenever you add the file, delete the file, modify a file, this will also be replicated.
The peer management center, Dennis, is that a crucial part in that replication, or are the VMs replicating with the other VMs?
Yeah, that is a good question, really good question. So the management center is not only for monitoring and managing the jobs, it's also acting like a hub, like the peer GFS hub. So it's a man in the middle. So whenever a file is created or opened on the server in Munich, it will be replicated to the management server, and the management server will act like a switch in a network or like a hub in a network. You can compare it to a star topology in the network, and spread out the information to all the other locations all at once.
So we have to make sure that that is high available.
Correct. Yeah, this makes sense. I mean, if the server is not available anymore, people can still access their data because it's hosted locally, but no replication and no file locking will work anymore.
And that can
so it makes sense to set this up high availability.
And can you distribute it across data centers?
It's possible to distribute a standby. So only one will be active, but you can distribute a passive one, for example, in Los Angeles.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, that
And
only.
What will happen when your management service went down for example, an hour? And people are opening files, editing files, and saving files. How is there some sort of consistency check when the management service went back online? If people edited the same documents?
Yeah. So let's say the management server is not available anymore. Then people can still work on the different locations here. And our agent will keep a list with all the changes that happen in the meantime. As soon as the management server is back online again, the agent servers will send the list to the management server, and the management server will compare everything with each other. So everything that has been added, modified in Munich will be replicated to the rest of the world, and everything from the rest of the world to Munich. So now it is possible that someone modified the same file in Munich and in Los Angeles because file locking was not working. What happened then is the management server will put the file into quarantine, and now you will have two different versions of the file. We won't touch it anymore. We won't delete or overwrite anything. And we want an administrator to make a decision, like the file version in Munich should overwrite the file in Los Angeles, or the last modified date should overwrite, the newest file should overwrite the older file. If the administrator is not willing to do this, you can also configure some rules, like last modified file should always win.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an undesirable situation, but it can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the more common situation is you have a network outage for one of these locations. So Munich is still up and running, but the network connection between Munich and the management center is not available anymore. But in case of that, people can still work in Munich. File locking between Los Angeles and Washington will still work. And the Munich agent will keep a list again of all the changes. And as soon as the connection is established, it's exactly the same. We send the list over, we compare it with the rest of the world, and then we will make sure that everything is consistent.
Nice.
Yeah. So now, because we have this namespace, this also gives us some HA capabilities. So if the Nutanix system or the data center has an outage here and disaster strikes, but people can still access the network, the namespace, then the namespace will redirect them to the next location, for example, to Los Angeles, and people from Munich can still work with their actual files. I mean, they have to deal with the latency of the connection now. They cannot work with local LAN speed anymore, but at least they can still work. And when they open a file in Los Angeles, of course, the file is again locked in Washington or for other people trying to open the same file in Los Angeles. As soon as the environment is back online again, we will make sure that the agent will ask the management server, hey, dear Mr. Management Server, what happened in the meantime? He will replicate everything back, or will make sure that everything is up to date in Munich. And only when Munich is up to date again, our agent will communicate to the namespace and make this site available to the namespace again. So you will have failover and failback capabilities.
Nice.
And yeah, this is collaboration.
And
Let me
Dennis,
check the chat. Yeah.
failback, that isn't natively available with just the Microsoft DFS namespace manager?
Yeah, that's correct. Because imagine this site has an outage. Now it's back online again. Then an administrator have to make sure that Munich, if you don't have peer software, an administrator have to make sure that Munich is up to date again in terms of the data. And then an administrator have to enable the namespace. But with peer software, because the agent can make sure that everything is up to date, the agent will only make the Munich location available again when the data is up to date again. So you have an automatic failback. And if you only use DFS namespace with DFSR from Microsoft, for example, if you have a Windows-only environment, then of course you will have a failover capability, but you won't have the failback capability or no automatic failback capabilities. Okay. So next use case is replication without file locking. Again, usually this is used for VDI, Citrix, Windows profiles. I have a similar environment, just two locations here, a Nutanix file system in Los Angeles, Nutanix file system in Washington. I have my agents connecting to both systems, and I have my central hub here, my management center. So now someone is coming into the office in Los Angeles in the morning, open his VDI workstation, and get his profile data from the Nutanix file system. Our agent now monitor every single change and replicate it continuously to Washington. The same, as soon as the guys in Washington starts working, they get their workstations from the file server in Washington, and every change will be replicated from Washington to Los Angeles. So now, if a disaster strikes and the system in Los Angeles is not available anymore, the guy from Los Angeles can still connect to the Nutanix files in Washington. And because we already replicated the data, his profile data is up to date, and he can seamlessly, or he just have to log in again and can seamlessly work with his VDI desktop.
Dennis, the closest file server is automatically selected for the user. So if I log in Los Angeles, it automatically uses the file server in Los Angeles.
This is something that is configurable through the DFS namespace. Usually, it's exactly how you described it. It will select the nearest, the file server with the lowest cost. But you can also do some hard coding, like hard mapping. This user should always point to Los Angeles. This user should always point to Washington. But I think the more common use configuration is the one you just described. It's based on the load, and the DFS namespace will map you to the nearest location.
Okay.
And then, as soon as the Los Angeles file server is back online again, or the location is back online again, it's exactly the same like the collaboration use case. The agent will ask the management server what happened in the meantime, replicate all the data back to Los Angeles, and only when all the data is up to date in Los Angeles, the guy here will be redirected to his desktop in Los Angeles. Okay.
Nice. And that redirection, will that happen on the fly while he's logged in, or will it happen when he logs back into the desktop?
Yeah, when he logs back into his desktop.
Yeah, exactly. No risks on disconnecting file shares and impacting applications.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. And something I have to mention here is the customers we are working together with. For example, we have a bank in Dubai. I've mentioned Vodafone. We do a POC. They host their profile data on a native share on Nutanix files, which means we can replicate the profile data continuously, seamlessly. However, if they use the desktop data, if they containerize it, like with FS Logics, then the data is only being replicated as soon as someone logs off from the desktop, because all the profile data is in a container, and we are not allowed to look into this container. This is why we always prefer to store the data natively on a share.
Okay, and if I use FS Logics, for example, that can lead to a fairly large amount of data. And when a user logs in on one site, how long does it take to replicate that amount of data to the other site? Because if I really quickly log into another desktop on the other site, I might not have my latest.
Yeah, this can cause some problem. I mean, it always depends on bandwidth and latency. For example, a colleague of mine, Caesar, is working in the States with your colleagues in the States as well for a VDI solution with Nutanix and FS Logics. And they are willing to use this, and they are aware that they cannot log in and log off instantly because the data needs to be replicated. But in the past, they used a robocopy script to copy the container over every night when no one is working. So it's still an improvement for them.
Yeah, huge improvement. Yeah.
But however, best use case is store your data not in a container, store it natively on a share.
All right, thanks.
Okay. And then I think from a sales perspective, the most interesting part is this one. This don't have to be so, and Pierce Software also is able to replicate data between Nutanix and NetApp, Nutanix and EMC, and Nutanix and Windows. And this means if you have a bigger customer who has already a lot of different NAS systems in place, they don't have to change everything all at once. They can just start playing around with Nutanix files, get used to it, build up some trust, and see that a Nutanix file system can do better, or at least the same for them than other shares can do on other systems. And then they can replace it one after another. So for example, they can get rid of this NetApp system here, and they can get rid of this EMC system. And because we are replicating the data constantly in the background, the cutover window will also be really, really small, because the data is already up to date. And then you will just place a Nutanix system right next to the Windows system here. Our agent will make sure that the Windows system and the Nutanix system have the same data set. And then at some downtime, you just have to switch your namespace and tell your Microsoft namespace, don't point to the Microsoft system anymore, point to the Nutanix system, right? And I think this can be really, really interesting from a sales perspective.
Yes, especially with larger customers or multiple environments.
Yeah.
Bart, you wanted to tell?
Yeah,
And of
I was
course,
the
yeah.
same, yeah.
And of course, you can use, again, synchronization with file locking or without file locking. Depends on the environment. So file locking is also working if we are open a file on a NetApp system, we can lock the file on a Nutanix system. So it doesn't matter.
And Dennis, what are my Active Directory requirements? Which dependencies on that part and so on?
So every agent server that is running here is running as a Microsoft service. And we need a service account that has local admin rights on the Nutanix system. So usually we need two accounts. One account is an Active Directory account that needs local administrator rights on the Nutanix file system. And the other account is an API account that we use to query the API. But for Active Directory, we only need a service account that is running here for the service. And this needs to have local admin rights. And this can be a different service account on each system, which means we can also replicate data between different domains. So these systems here don't have to share the same domain. Of course, we cannot transfer the ACLs, owner information, stuff like that, if the systems are running in a different domain, but at least we can replicate the data between different domains.
Oh, cool. And like support for Azure ID, for example?
Oh, you have to give me some input. What is Azure ID?
Azure Active Directory Services.
Yeah, okay. AD, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Active Directory, of course. Yeah, that should also work as long as, because all we do is we grab the ID, the SID, replicate it to the other side and put it in there. And as long as something can resolve the SID, then we are fine.
Okay. Yeah.
But Azure is a good point. This brings me to my next topic. And this is the last use case before I jump into the live demo.
I have one question left. My management center. What are the best ways to make that high available? Seeing the dependency of it, or what do you see nowadays? How organizations, your customers, make this part high available in the solution?
Of course, the most obvious answer is put it on a Microsoft cluster. But I see it more and more often that people get rid of Microsoft cluster because Microsoft clusters are nice, but they also give a lot of additional complexity to the environment. And I don't get any HA feature if the administrator don't know what to do in a case of a disaster. So people end up using the hypervisor high availability features, or they just put a passive peer management center next to this management center and replicate the config over to the second management center. And if the management center is not up and running anymore, they will just start the services on this management center. So they use it as a cold standby server. So 3 different solutions. Microsoft cluster, use the hypervisor features, or install a second one as a cold standby.
Yeah. Okay.
And most common is use the hypervisor features.
Perfect.
Okay, so what else? Last but not least, if you have your Nutanix file system and you have our agent, you can also replicate data into object storage. This can be traditional cloud storage like Azure, Blob, Amazon S3, but this can also be an on-prem object storage like Nutanix Objects. And what we can do here is if you provide us an object space, as soon as someone writes a file on the Nutanix file system, we get an event and replicate it immediately into the object. And what we do is we do single file to single object, which means we don't put the data into an archive, virtual tape format, or something like that. If you put your AutoCAD file into your object storage, it still looks like an AutoCAD file. If you put a video file into it, it still looks like a video file. So if you use a storage explorer, an object explorer, to look into your object storage, you will still see your native file systems there. And this is nice. We call this analytics ready, because then you can use the data that is stored in your object storage right away to use some, don't know, pattern matching, face recognizing, whatever you do with your object storage. Yeah.
This is definitely cool. Yeah.
And
what you can do, you can also make files, delete protection, right? Worm,
yes.
So we support it on objects.
Correct. Yeah.
And every time a file changes, Dennis, does it save a new version of the file and objects?
Yes. Right. You can see it here with the red line here. You modify your Word document here on your Nutanix system, and now you have two different versions of the Word document, and you can restore the old version, the new version, whatever.
So as I'm the newbie, Dennis, I'm going to state the obvious. I'll be Captain Obvious for a moment. This is great if there's a malware strike, because each version of each file, once it's in object storage, can't be changed. Right. So if you need to go back because of a malware strike, you have that data there in a highly scalable backup or snapshot solution, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Fair enough. Yeah. But this, of course, only acts as a target. Yeah, for backup, for archive, analytic services. This don't act as a failover storage, because an object is not designed to be used as a native file storage for constantly changed data. But of course, you can host a second system, for example, a small Windows VM running in Azure, as an HA, disaster recovery copy. So now, if someone just mess up something with his files here, with his Word document, you can restore it out of the object storage. Or if the Nutanix system, for whatever reason, is not reachable anymore, people can still work on their files on the small Windows box running in Azure. So now I will try to connect.
I got one last question, yes. Dennis. You said that we could use Nutanix, Peer Software and Nutanix for migration strategies with multiple hardware vendors, for example, with file services underneath. That's is there a because you're still a license of your software, I presume? Is there a migration type of license available for those use cases as well?
Yes, for this use cases, usually you don't need the software like forever. Then you can rent it for 30 days. We have a migration license that you can rent per source for 30 days.
Perfect. That makes sense.
So
right, demo time.
And yes, so I have my PMC here in Munich, where our management software is running. And this management software has a couple of Windows servers connected and 2 Nutanix file systems. And as you can see, you can integrate your Microsoft namespace here. This is still the Microsoft namespace. You can still manage it over your Microsoft MMC. But if you want to, you can integrate it here, monitor it from here, manage it from here, and this give you the failover capability. And then we have all of these different job types. Collaboration, which is replication with file locking. And I've already prepared a job here between 2 Nutanix systems. One is sitting in Berlin, one is in Dublin. I have 2 shares here, one on the Nutanix file system in Berlin, one on the Nutanix file system in Dublin. Both sites are active. I replicate the data between both of these sites. Then there is a little bit of configuration that you can do, like include, exclude list. I don't want to replicate MP3 files. I don't want to replicate the subfolder temporary. I don't want to replicate files that aren't touched for 365 days, stuff like that. You can configure email alerts, SNMP traps, and you can align this job to your namespace. And all we need to make this work is a share on the Nutanix system and a user account that we can use to connect to the Nutanix API. So there is a pre-requirement document that I can send over to you afterwards, where you can see we have to provide a user account with certain rights on the Nutanix file system that we can use to connect to the API. But after that, you can simply replicate the data between these systems. So now, if I go to my workstation here, I have one workstation at site number A and another workstation at site number B. And as you can see, I have connected the Nutanix files share on the Nutanix file system in Germany with workstation 3. And the other side is connected to the Nutanix file system in, where was it? Dublin, I think.
Yes.
And is connected there. So now, let's go into the IT software folder here. Let's create a new document. Let's open a document. And everything that I do here is creating an event, and our agent will get the event through the Nutanix API and send it over to the management server. So now I have opened a file in a read-write mode. And if I go back to the management server and I look under session, I can see now that this document is opened on the host Berlin with the user Han Solo. Therefore, it's logged in Dublin. In our event log, I can also see who have just created a new text document, on which site. Then he renamed the text document. Then we synchronized the text document to Dublin. Then someone also opened a Word document here in Berlin. So let's log the document on the other side. So if I go to Dublin, go into IT software, you can see the file has been replicated, but I think this is not the interesting part. So now if I open the same document that is already opened in Berlin, come on, I get this message, the document is locked. It's already being in use by Han Solo. So please give me a notification as soon as the original file is available again. So now, if I close this file here, there will be a quiet period of, I think, 30 seconds, but you can already see it here. It's not open anymore. And after 30 seconds, we will get a, oh, okay, I've lowered it for the demo. I think I've lowered it to 15 seconds. We will get a pop-up message here that you can now open the file in a read-write mode. And now the file is opened in Dublin by the user Luke Skywalker, and it's logged in Berlin. So file replication and file locking is working, which I think is a nice feature.
That's absolutely nice, and also like your naming convention for your users. So that's nice as well.
Okay, but fair enough. I did not make the naming convention. I think it was Pete, our technical manager. So, what else? There's also a job I did not mention during my slides. There's a one-way replication, a traditional source target replication. You can use this for CDP. Let's imagine you have a customer with 20 remote offices with small Windows boxes, and you want them to replicate their file data into your Nutanix file system that is hosted in the headquarters. Then you can build up some CDP solution with this job type here. And last but not least, we have the file synchronization, which is used for the VDI, Citrix profiles, Windows profile stuff. Here's also a job configured. And if we look into it, it again replicates data between the two systems, Berlin and Dublin, but this time a different share. On this share, there are is the profile data hosted. Of course, I've connected it again to a namespace, a different folder target, DE user. And now let's see if we can simulate a disaster. I've connected to the global namespace here with a network drive. And I think this one should pointing to, let's check. This one is pointing to the Nutanix files in Dublin. And the other side is pointing also to Dublin. Okay, this is bad. Then let's switch this one to Germany. Okay, there we go. So now here we are on the Nutanix file system in Germany. And here we are on the Nutanix file system in Dublin. Yes. So now someone, let's say user number 1 is working in Dublin. Let's open a Word document here. And now, for whatever reason, the system in Dublin is not running anymore. I won't turn off the VM now because I'm not sure if someone else is using the demo lab as well. So let's just turn off the share. Where is my DFSN management? There it is. Here's my namespace configuration. There's my user configuration. And yeah, let's turn off. Where was I connected? I'm confused today. Dublin, right?
Dublin.
Yeah, Dublin. Yeah, connected to Dublin. Then let's turn off Dublin. This one. Let's disable it. So now when we check this again, we should see that Dublin is not available anymore and Germany is becoming active. But I can still work here. I can still save my stuff. I can still close it. Don't know, open it again. Oh, wait, user 1. What was it, 5.6? And in Dublin, of course, nothing changed. Right? In Germany, it's still connected to the German part. So now, let's turn this on again. And what will happen now? Our agent will make sure that all the data is up to date on each location, and only then it will set the namespace back again to the other side. And there's also a quiet period, a safety period of 5 minutes. So I think we don't want to wait this 5 minutes. So let's just set it active manually. So now we are working in Dublin again. And our data is here in Dublin. And of course, here we are still connected to the system in Germany. And the data is transferred between both systems. So if I open this here in Dublin, it's already there. However, everything, if you want to make sure that everything is working correctly, you can always look in our event log and you can see who have changed the file, is the file being replicated, who has opened the file, is there something deleted, stuff like that. And if the file has been modified on both locations, then we will put the file into quarantine. So now, maybe you have seen it, I've made them mess around a little bit in the background. I've opened the file now in this version on Dublin, and if we check this on the other side, no, this was Germany in Dublin, it's a little bit different. The reason for that is I opened, during the downtime, I opened the file on both sides in a read-write mode. And what we have to do now as an administrator is we have to make a decision which is the correct version of the file. So at the moment, we have 2 different file versions. But now I can say, okay, please make sure that the version in Dublin is the correct one and override the version in Germany. So now the conflict is gone. We can check in our event log that we have synchronized the changes. And now, if we open the file again, it should be the same on both locations. Wait, why is it down there now? There we go. So again, we don't overwrite anything. You're always in control of your data. If you trigger a conflict, we will put the file into quarantine, and you're in complete control of your data. So we have transparent failover, we have data security, and if you want to, we also have file locking in place. Okay, and any questions?
Very nice. I don't have any questions so far. It looks good. The file locking thing is very useful, I think, if you have department shares. The option without file locking for home directories, profile directories, etc. So the file locking, is it very? What are the downsides of file locking? So why wouldn't I do file locking on my home directory, for example?
There are some kind of files that you can't lock. So what we do is we look into the file open table of the operating system. So into your Acropolis file system, we can see this Word document is open. But for example, temporary internet files from Google Chrome or stuff like that, they won't support file locking and it will cause conflicts. And that is a reason why you should not replicate temporary files with file locking.
But that's a good reason. You can also exclude those temporary files as you showed before, right? That's probably also a good thing to do.
This is also possible, but kind of hard to figure out what do we really have to exclude in user profile folders. If you have ever looked into a profile folder, there's a lot of data, there's a lot going on.
Yes, there is indeed, yes. And a lot of it is not per se necessary after a reboot of the virtual machine.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
And of course,
sorry. Go ahead.
And of course, the file collaboration, the file locking is an additional event. And if we don't need this event to replicate, which means, every event will put some load on the NAS system, on the Nutanix file system. And if there's no need for file locking, then I won't do it, because then we can get rid of events. Let's say 2,000 users are opening a file and we have enabled file locking. This means we are triggering 2,000 events at your Nutanix file system. And why should we trigger these events if they are not needed?
Yeah, true. Sounds like the smart thing to do. Bart, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. One thing I had in mind, we already discussed, like integration with S3-based storage, like our object solution, and integration with the public cloud, like Azure, for example. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit more, Dennis, on that functionality, because it's something we see a lot for demand perspective at customers.
Yes, sure. So right now, our Nutanix object system is not set up. It's not up and running. We just got a new one. But I think this one here is replicating to Azure Blob. New York SMB file server, batched real time. Yeah, this is replicating to Azure Blob. So what we can do is you can select the source path from any file server, any Nutanix file system. You can, again, of course, select file filters. And then you can provide your object storage credentials. For example, in this case here, we use an Azure Blob account. So we share our key here, our security information. And then we can replicate the data scheduled. This is the only job where you can do scheduled replication, because maybe you don't want the data to be replicated every time a file is created on your file server. Maybe you just want to replicate it in the evening for a backup purpose. Or you can, of course, use real-time replication. And there's something else called batched real-time, but I don't think we have to go into too much detail now. If you want to know a little bit more about cloud replication, we can do a whole nother session for around about an hour and just talk about cloud replication. But to keep it on a high-level overview, you can replicate the data scheduled, or in real time, then you can, and this is special, you can replicate NTFS permissions into an object storage. If you are familiar to object storage, you know object storage don't support NTFS permissions. But we do a small workaround here. We put a file into the object storage where we store the like a text document or a config document where we store the SIDs and the files and folders. And if you do a restore job, we will use this document to restore NTFS permissions on your file server, which I think is a nice feature. Then, of course, you can also trigger snapshots on your object storage, like do a snapshot every hour, once a day, every week, and keep it for, don't know, 30 days, 2 weeks, 10 years, whatever. And after that, this is running like a usual job in the background, and there's also a restore wizard. So you can access your data over your storage explorer at Azure Blob and just work with it, run some scripts against it, some applications, some analytic services, whatever you do with your object storage. Yep. And you can also use it as a backup recovery solution. So there's a traditional restore wizard where you can choose what you would like to recover on the file server in New York, maybe the latest version, or I can choose a snapshot or a certain point in time to search for a file. I can then browse my file storage. Let's say I want to restore this picture here. I want to restore it at another location. Let's see if this works. I'm not sure. Recover with NTFS permissions. Validating pass. It's working okay. Was not sure if the $C share is available on the server. Then we start the recover job. Slow bandwidth to Azure. Now it's finished successfully. And if I look on my server Munich here under C, there it is. Curious, what is it? I don't know.
It's a moon lander.
Moon landing, yeah. Cape Canaveral, I think.
Nice.
So yeah, you can use it as a traditional backup and restore or for analytics services. So if you would access your Azure Blob storage here, you would see the files right away. There's no archive or no virtual tape format involved.
Very nice. Any other remarks you want to make, Bart? Any questions left for you from your side?
No, that this time. I'm like I said before, truly impressed by the functionality of the product. So very useful in many cases, especially in combination with files and now with objects. So pretty good.
Yep, I see a lot of benefits, especially from the high available side. If we have highly available sites with multiple data centers like hospitals or governmental institutions that require this high availability, that's definitely a big plus. You have the objects integration, but also the migration part is really interesting from our side because that's typically a robocopy, which is kind of tedious, and exactly. So this might help with the special license for that as well. So thank you very much, Dennis, for your presentation and your demo. It was really good and really clear to me.
Good. That's nice.
Right. I think we're going to wrap it up then, guys. Any last remarks from anyone?
Oh, just thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's a Friday. We're close to lunch. So for now, enjoy the weekend. Stay healthy, and hope to see you guys again in the near future.
Okay.
You too.
And I will send the slides to you, and then you can, spread it out to everyone else if you want to. And if anyone have a question, just reach out to us, and feel free to give us a call, write us an email, whatever.
We know where to find you. Probably viewers know where to find you as well, Dennis. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.